everybody, unless of course you're watching this video in the evening. In that case, good evening, and you're watching Time Travel TV, and today we are going to be talking about the Gunpowder Plot. If you're watching this outside the United Kingdom, you've probably got no idea what I'm talking about, but if you do, great. If you don't, you're going to find out. So, in 1603, King James I became King of England. And most people noticed that he wasn't doing an awful lot to persecute the Catholics. And this made Parliament quite cross. They told him to do more, so he did more, and this made the Catholics quite cross. So anyway, a chap called Robert Cakeson, who had 4 friends, more than I have, he was a Catholic, and his 4 friends were Catholics, and they decided to kill the king. And they decided to do this by blowing up the Houses of Parliament. So what they did is that they bought a house near the Houses of Parliament. One of the conspirators was a chap called Guy Fawkes. Now, he'd spent some time in the army, in the Spanish army, fighting against the Dutch, and he knew about gunpowder. So they tasked him with buying up lots of gunpowder, little bit at a time, little bit by little bit by little bit, so nobody would get suspicious. And no one was suspicious at all that he was constantly buying gunpowder, by the way. No one found that suspicious. But eventually he had loads, and Robert rented a cellar, which he used the excuse. It was for his friend, the Earl of Northumbria. And he said that was going to, for him, to put firewood in. And what they did, they put a bit of firewood in, but behind that they put the gunpowder. Now, eventually the conspiracy got bigger. And more conspiracists? I don't know. Anyway, more and more people got involved until there was 13. I don't have enough fingers to say 13, but I'm going to have to pretend I've got 13 fingers. Anyway, so 13 people were involved, and the more you get involved, the more likely it's going to go wrong. Because Lord Monteagle was told not to go to Parliament because you're going to get blown up. This sent alarm bells ringing, so he told his friend Robert Cecil. Nobody knows who tipped him off, but it doesn't really matter, because he told his friend Robert Cecil, who was the chief spymaster, who was a very important person, pally with King James I. They were like that. Robert, James. Anyway, so they decided to go and search the House of Parliament on the 4th of November 1605, and they didn't find anything until somebody had the bright idea of looking in the cellar. And they found Guy Fawkes, not looking suspicious at all. He only had his riding boots on, he had his spurs on, he also had a packet of, not a packet, but a bag of long matches in his pocket, and just behind the small amount of firewood there was 36 barrels of gunpowder. Not suspicious at all. Didn't look as if he was going to do a runner afterwards on his horse. No. Anyway, so they arrested him, and they put him before King James, and King James said, "You silly man." Didn't say "you silly man," he probably said something a bit stronger than that, but he said, "Do you have any regrets?" He said, "Yes, I do, I regret it failed," he said. He said, "I don't like you," he said. He probably used stronger language in that. But anyway, he then told him he said, "Give me the names of the other conspirators." And he said, "No." And James said, "You will." And Guy Fawkes said, "I won't." So James ordered him to be tortured until he would admit it. So he was tortured. He was put on the rack, which is where they stretched him until he couldn't do it anymore. And then he confessed. And he confessed, yes, I was trying to blow up the House of Parliament. And yes, I will tell you the name of the other conspirators. Here they are. And he wrote them down. Well, he probably didn't write them down because he was probably really, his arms are really aching afterwards. He probably told them. Now, what happened to the other conspirators? Well, they had disappeared. They were off, because they didn't want to be anywhere near the House of Parliament. They were riding through the country, telling everyone the king was dead. This wasn't the case, by the way, the king wasn't dead. But they told everyone the king was dead. And they said what they have to do is they have to join the Catholic Revolution, and not many people did. Half of them got blown up when they were trying to dry out their own gunpowder. We don't know if they were it was suicide or whether it was an accident. Once Guy Fawkes had capitulated and told them who what the conspirators was, the other load were killed in a gunfight with the army. Eventually, on the 5th of November, the day afterwards, Guy Fawkes was executed. He was supposed to be hung, drawn and quartered, but he wasn't. What happened is that they told that he stepped up one extra step on the ladder, so he broke his neck as he fell, and he died instantly. And that's the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to Time Travel TV, and cheerio.